Greetings, it's Adam with the Rata Non Grata, and happy birthday to Alien vs. Predator on the Atari Jaguar 64-bit multimedia game console. And so when it comes to AVP, as we usually call it, although it's not the only version of Alien vs. Predator out there, nor was it the first, although it was the first to bring the concept to the first-person genre. Previous to this, there was Alien vs. Predator in the arcade by Capcom, which was a little strange, but I mean, you probably wouldn't want to go around slashing aliens that are xenomorphs with acidic blood, super acidic blood, with a samurai sword. But I'm sure you could come up with some excuses to why that metal doesn't instantly melt like other metals do when it comes in contact with that sort of blood. But anyways, back in 97 or so, I first discovered the Atari Jaguar at a friend's house, and this was the only game that I can recall that he had for it, but it's what hooked me to the Jaguar. Now, granted, growing up, I had played the Atari 2600 VCS, as it had been known, or just the 2600 as most people called it. I wasn't really aware of the 5200 or the 7800. I knew about the Lynx, of course. I had really wanted a Lynx after seeing it in various comic book ads, but it was just, well, aside from being a little bit pricey for a kid, it was also just, I'd never seen it at any place that I went to. Now, granted, I didn't go to a ton of places that sold video games at the time. I think Toys R Us might have been it, but I didn't get to go to Toys R Us all that often. And if I did, I might have scrapped together a little money that I had to buy some Game Boy games. One of the most disappointing of which was Kirby for the Game Boy, which I beat so fast. I was like, I saved up all my money for that, short of an experience. But anyways, by the time I was a teenager and had my own job, I saved up, and I discovered the Jaguar, and I was like, I want to buy my first game console. I was more into the PC. Oh, and by the way, I'm speeding up the footage right here while I'm waiting as the alien, and so that doesn't take quite so long to get through. But I had saved up my pennies since I had a job at this point, and saved up to buy a Jaguar, which I got from a local retailer who still carried it, even though by 1997 it was well and dead, and everybody was well into the PlayStation and the N64, and soon the Dreamcast was coming. But made for great deals at the time. I mean, those days of collecting the Jaguar, it was nowhere near as expensive as it is now. Now, I'm also going to speed things up just because, even though AVP was the game that I really enjoyed with the Jaguar, and again, the one that got me hooked into it, out of the three scenarios you could play, the Alien is the most tedious. I mean, the pro is just how fast the game goes normally, as you'd seen there earlier, as that wasn't sped up in any way, but the whole part of it where you can't use the elevators and you have to go through the air ducts, that's super tedious. I suppose you could say that that's where the alien mode gets its challenge from, although, I don't know, again, it's not really fun to go through those air ducts just because there's nothing that distinguishes anything. It's like, at least there's the auto map feature, obviously that comes in super handy. And yeah, after when I finally got my Jaguar and I got AVP, which it actually wasn't my first game, it wasn't even like my first, I think it was like the 7th game I got or something like that, as that one was a little pricey still just because it was so popular when it came to the Jaguar games that were available. But I played it a lot. I think I played it for like a month straight for all the free time any free time that I had when I wasn't in school or at work. And yeah, you actually could end up kind of memorizing certain air ducts because you had to go into them so often. But still, it's just like I kind of wish they would have made them like cut out some of the dead space in some of the levels. Like there's quite a bit of it in this particular game, and just like even the air duct portions themselves obviously have a lot of silly dead ends that they just put in there just to be like, well, I guess being challenging will be tedium. But maybe if they had just whittled down a little bit of that, they could have thrown in some extra stuff, whether it was textures of alien hardened alien goo like right there, or like fans in there or something, just to give it a little bit of variety. Would have made it a little more interesting at least. I mean, you still could have had it somewhat maze-like, so it wasn't super simple, I guess, but still, just I don't know of anybody who found the alien scenario in this game to be the most compelling, just because of that one problem right there, because you have to navigate through air ducts all the way up from sublevel 5 all the way up to sublevel 1. And sometimes, as you saw there in the very first sublevel, the first air duct you have access to, it only gives you access to one other part of sublevel 5, and then from there you have to find the correct air duct, and then from there you have to get to the correct duct in 4, which is the main point of this video. Because I could go on, but I decided not to because it would just take forever, and I had to speed things up a few times in this one. But still, overall, the game, despite parts like the air ducts, I really enjoyed that, because at the time when this came out in 1994, I mean, it was different. The closest thing that I could compare it to is maybe Blake Stone on the PC. I was a big PC gamer before I'd discovered the Jaguar. But games of this nature, you know, Wolf 3D, Blake Stone, and such, were kind of big. Of course, Doom took the wind out of their sails pretty much, although I'd say AVP was one of the last Wolf 3D-like games to come along. That was really cool because if you played the Marine, you actually had a story where if you accessed the computers, you could learn what happened kind of bit by bit. I mean, sometimes you could jump ahead on accident and whatever, but it was really interesting because almost every first-person shooter back in those days was the Doom formula or the Wolf 3D formula, where you just have one level, go kill the guys, collect the keys, get to the end, the exit, and move on to the next level, and rinse and repeat a bunch of times until you got to the last boss, and then you beat the game. And let's be honest, that was tedious too. I think the main reason that Doom's held on for so long is not so much because of that gameplay, but because of the ability to mod it. Maybe that's blasphemy, I'm sure, but come on, we can all admit that that's what really kept it more compelling than just, you know, going on a key collecting quest. Now, of course, there was plenty about Doom's level design and other things that made it compelling too, but just the core gameplay of, you know, finding your key cards, unlocking those doors and whatnot, that was a little bit tedious too. And yes, not saying that AVP doesn't have its tedium. I already mentioned the air ducts, and of course it was also a little bit like that too, because you have to collect the key cards when you're the human. But at least with the alien and the predator scenarios, it wasn't like that at all. There was no keys to collect. Now, of course, there wasn't any story really to unfold. As the alien, you're just trying to get to the predator ship and free the queen. As the predator, you're trying to get to the alien ship and capture the queen. And so those weren't necessarily deep or anything. But again, it was basically an open world game. Obviously not on the scale of what we see these days, but still allowing you to wander around a space station, and you don't have these marked boss fights except for the alien queen, really, and it made it interesting and unique compared to other games of its era. And the other thing that is different about the alien is you can't heal, and you die fairly fast depending on what you decide on if you're going to be more stealthy or if you just run in, not necessarily guns blazing, but double jaw blazing, or fangs, or we should say the tail. But to make up for that, that's where you could cocoon guys. So you have to claw them, then hit them with the tail, then claw them again, then walk over them, and then that turns them into an encased alien. I can't remember the exact terminology there, but as you saw or have seen in the lower left-hand side, or just the left-hand side of the screen, it does take a little while for the alien embryo to gestate, but that's, again, the way that you get around it. Now, of course, there's drawbacks to that because it's essentially a checkpoint, and especially when you have to go through air ducts, kind of sucks when it puts you back a ways, and you kind of have to retread your footsteps. And so I do remember writing or drawing down the air ducts at one point on graph paper, just because it was a pain. And that's actually what I was trying to kill my character here, because the other alien that I had created was further ahead, so I wouldn't have to go through the air duct all again. But I'd killed everybody around here, and blowing up the barrels wasn't enough to kill me, so oh well. But just that didn't incorporate an element of strategy into the game as well. That wasn't always present in first-person shooters of the early 90s, or boomer shooters, I guess we could call this. But yeah, also I can't really think of any game. Now, maybe I am missing something. But from the first-person games I remember playing back then on PC, I don't remember anything where you had like melee type combat like this. It was always just guns of some kind, which I don't have any problem with. Just made it unique too. And I skipped over going through the tunnels there or the air duct there, just because who wants to watch me want to do that. Now I'm almost getting to sublevel 4 here, which again you have to go through the first air ducts of 5C, and then get to the next area and then find the correct air duct, which I will here in a moment. And then in there you have to find the correct one to get into sublevel 4. And then on sublevel 4 you have to find the correct air duct to get to 3, and so on. Now, if I recall correctly, AVP was the best-selling game on the Jaguar. The only other game to get close or maybe beat it, but I can't remember the exact numbers, was Tempest 2000. Now, I find it hard to believe that Tempest would have sold more than AVP, because AVP obviously had the name, and it was innovative, and it was well reviewed. Back in the day, I remember GamePro gave it some pretty good marks and everything. Now, of course, when the PlayStation came around with more elaborate 3D graphics and such, then it kind of stomped any little chance that the Jaguar had. But this was still a great game in the library, and it's, even though it's the kind of cliche to call it the best or one of the favorites, it is one of mine, because I spent a lot of time on it. I had not spent so much time on this or on a game on any console previously. Now, of course, being a PC gamer, there was plenty of RPGs that I'd play that I spent plenty of time on, like Castle of the Winds and some other games. But at least with AVP on a console, that really got me glued to the TV, especially in a way that I'd never experienced before on an Atari game. But so here's the air duct where you get to find sublevel 4. Really quick before we end, I wanted to mention that Alien vs. Predator 2 was in development for the Jaguar CD. I remember back on Jaguar Sector 2, in a certain privileged area of the forums, there was the design document for it that had been produced at Rebellion. Now, I don't know how far along it got. I don't think it got along very far. Rebellion had been working on some other games like Skyhammer, as well as Legions of the Undead. Legions of the Undead had only gotten somewhere like 25-30% complete, and it used a much enhanced version of the Alien vs. Predator engine, But unfortunately, I don't think there's been any code to that ever discovered. Now, from what little I can recall of reading the design document on AVP2, I mean, as I mentioned, it would have been on the Jaguar CD. That would have resulted in better audio package, full motion video of the time, which, that was always hit and miss. But one of the things I distinctly remember was that it would have allowed you, as the alien, to climb on the walls and the ceiling, which is something that the Rebellion implemented in the 1999 PC version of Aliens vs. Predator. But although sometimes that was a little disorienting with how fast it got. I remember, I had an NVIDIA graphics card, but I can't remember what it was called. Was that did they call that the TNT2 or something? But I remember getting that game and playing it, and it was like, holy cow, you move maybe too fast as the alien on this one. But would have been interesting to see the Jaguar CD version of this. They likely would have used an engine similar to Legions of the Undead, which had higher ceilings. I guess was a little bit more like Doom on the engine, but still somewhat still in the roots of this Wolf 3D style. But I guess we'll never know, since they never got really far with it. But again, it would have provided a better, more complete experience, and I'm sure if they had got it released during the Jaguar CD's very short lifetime, it maybe could have moved a few hundred more units. That wouldn't have saved the Jag CD, most likely. Although, then again, the AVP itself was really kind of one of two killer apps for the system that moved units. I mean, AVP definitely moved units, but again, it's hard to say that, or it's doubtful to say that the CD version of an AVP sequel would have had the same effect on saving the Jaguar up against the PlayStation juggernaut. But if I can ever find those documents, maybe they're on one of the Jaguar Extremis packs that I have. I can't recall. I haven't looked through those in a long time. It'd be interesting to go over that document, and just for historical preservation's sake. But let me know what you think of AVP on the Jaguar, and was it your favorite game, or did you hate it? Were you one of those that just didn't find it compelling enough, or maybe first-person shooters weren't your thing? And if you did like it, what was your favorite scenario to play? Mine was definitely the Marine, because that's where I spent the most time and is the deepest part of the game. Although a very close second would have been Predator. Predator was just fun to run around, kind of like a tank, and that was a great way to memorize the layout of the normal levels, since you couldn't go into the air ducts there. But just overall, really good game for 1994, in my humble opinion. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.